County deputy used enough force to leave an innocent man brain damaged. Do you think the sheriff would do some soul searching about whether changes were in order?
Instead, King 5 investigator Linda Byron found the sheriff's office did nothing in that and other use of force cases. Linda, I understand there's something, somewhat of a twist in this one, too.
There is actually, Lori. When we first brought our findings to the sheriff, she seemed surprised and she was defensive. But then, after sleeping on it, she did something I've never seen before.
The two of us intersected right here on this square of sidewalk. He did a full body takedown on me from behind. I guess he swept my feet out from under me and then pushed my face into the pavement.
Seattle computer consultant Jeff Gold will never forget his encounter with King County Sheriff's Deputy Matt Paul.
Expected him to maybe yell at me and wag a finger or something. Did not expect a full-on body tackle and having my face smashed into the pavement. And this was the moment when the officer became aware of my presence.
Gold admits he antagonized Paul by taking pictures while the deputy was reprimanding people for drinking in a bus shelter, and then by jaywalking.
And you're seeing my forehead all abraded.
But Gold doesn't think he deserves what he got.
I don't see any circumstances where jaywalking results in blood flow.
Gold was arrested, but never charged. He fired off an angry email to the sheriff.
I wanted the incident investigated to the extent that I sincerely believed that the officer had overstepped his bounds.
Gold never got his investigation.
Code 4250.
A lapse that's hard to understand, considering Paul is the same deputy who knocked a man into a wall a year earlier.
There, but for the grace of God, go I. I mean, that could have been me easily.
The case of Chris Harris was deeply upsetting. It's still hard to watch the video of the blow that left Harris so brain damaged he can't even feed himself.
An investigation should be done into what happened.
The sheriff promised accountability. A news release 2 days after the incident announced Paul was on paid leave. Detectives would complete their investigation within days. The file would then go to internal investigations for policy review and possible discipline. And finally, the Seattle police chief would review it to ensure it was complete and without bias. That's not at all what happened, and we wanted to know why. So we came straight to the top, here, to the King County Sheriff, to ask for an explanation.
This was a very unique case. We did not have a process in place that would accommodate this unusual set of circumstances.
Instead of taking swift action, the sheriff's office seemed immobilized. The use of force review, typically done immediately, put on hold, not completed until 9 months later, long after Paul had quietly returned to the street.
Switch it up.
And even then, a key recommendation wasn't followed.
Get a new partner.
Giving deputies use of force options and defensive tactics training, like this. Has there been any department-wide retraining? Has there been any retraining of the officer?
Not as a result of this specific case. Again, this was a very unexpected, unique set of circumstances.
Internal investigations never even got the case. Why wouldn't you have your internal investigations unit look at this to make sure there was no misconduct?
There was no need for that, Linda. We had witness statements. We had a very clear investigation.
She's talking about the investigation done by her major crimes unit. It was exhaustive, hundreds of pages of interviews and reports. But by failing to send the Harris case to another police department, the sheriff never got the second opinion she'd promised. Did you do enough?
I think we did enough.
What no one did was take a blanket look at Paul's use of force over his 5.5-year career. That is, until we reviewed his file last month. We found 19 use of force cases and 7 complaints to internal investigations, 2 of them as recent as December. That's a lot of complaints. Many officers go their entire careers without even one. Why is King 5 the only one looking at this officer in the big picture?
Well, you're not the only one looking at him. As I said, we have looked at his file.
But you can't tell me today if you think his use of force across the board throughout his career is acceptable.
Well, I can tell you it's acceptable in the context of following the policy.
But after that interview, something unusual happened.
Thank you for coming back, Linda.
The sheriff asked for a second chance.
And frankly, it's a little embarrassing that you ask the right questions. I think you deserve an answer. I think the public deserves the answers to those tough questions.
She told us Paul was now being put on a personal performance plan and sent back to the academy for additional training.
I do believe that he can make some different decisions, and we want him to make some different decisions, and we're going to do that. I'm not going to go on television and trash one of my employees, but I'm also not going to ignore a pattern that I'm concerned about.
She promised the jaywalker would get his investigation.
To be honest, it fell through the cracks.
And that outside review of Harris the sheriff promised 2 years ago, it's finally going to happen.
I have complete confidence that it was a thorough, objective investigation. I understand in a case that's this high profile, the necessity of having an outside agency review it as well.
And the sheriff says she will let us know as soon as she gets an outside agency on board for that review. And in the meantime, there's a lot happening with Deputy Paul. He's been sent to training all this week to improve his communication skills and handling of crisis situations. He's been told he's being watched and he'll be on a personal improvement plan for at least 6 months. The sheriff also promising to take a look at department-wide training.